Welcome to Replenish the Atmosphere of Discovery, where we discover the Master's plan for our lives. So today's session is on managing boundaries. Today's session is on managing boundaries. Okay, so you will be managing the boundaries that you have created to remain in good health mentally, physically, and emotionally, right? So, in order to do that, it requires you to control or limit access to you. So, that's why you set boundaries, okay? You have to determine who and what you give the authorization to influence your decisions, your mood, and your thoughts, right? So your mood are your temporary feelings. It's a temporary state of mind. So somebody says they're in a bad mood or whatever, it's temporary. Okay. That's something that you can change with how you manage your feelings. Okay. So these three things, your decisions, your mood, and your thoughts control your day. When you have and use your authority in a way that benefits your growth, it automatically challenges the negative influences, right? And the things that negatively influence you could be your feelings, your emotions, right? People can negatively influence you, your thoughts, your desires can be a negative influence. So when you use the authority that you have to manage your boundaries, it will challenge those negative influences, right? A lot of times as believers, we place it all on Jesus to do everything for us, right? But what was his famous words? He said, "It's finished," right? Even God, we want God to literally do everything for us, but he's resting. He's already completed creation, right? He's not going to renew your mind for you, okay? He gives you what to put your mind on, and you must choose to keep your mind on it, okay? He gives you the way of escape, but you must choose to take that exit instead of taking a detour back on another path, okay? The abilities that we have are given by God. The ability to process things, to have thought and feeling and imaginations. This was created by God, right? They made us in the likeness of their image. He could speak into existence. We can speak into existence, right? The ability that he's given us is for good, it's not for evil. Okay. So the strength of our hope and our faith is not for us to go against his will, but we do. Okay, we place our strength in people and things that continue the broken cycles. And then we also use those abilities that he's given us to assist in our own destruction. Our ability to reason, right? To respond, our ability to act, to do things. It's supposed to be for good. We're not supposed to be using our ability to reason with things and to have be the most highest intelligent being and not use it for good. Sometimes we act dumber than animals, right? But he's given us this intellect and this emotional intelligence and this ability to discern things, and we don't use it for good, right? So once you exit that discovery stage, right? I told you the first two volumes of Replenish was more about discovery, discovering the things that were hidden, discovering the parts of you that you may have buried. That those two volumes were the discovery stage. This volume, volume 3, is your recovery. Okay, it's after you've gone through the process, most of the processing, you've uncovered the hidden things, and you're starting to walk in who you really are. Okay. So once you've gotten out of that stage of discovery and you enter recovery, you must set boundaries or limits for yourself and for others in order to maintain that state of balance, right? Or wholeness. In order for you to remain in your authentic self, you have to establish some boundaries, right? Some of us had no idea that we needed to do that, right? We let people walk all over us. We let people speak into our lives. We let them determine the outcome of our lives, right? But now that you are in recovery, you have the authority to set those boundaries, okay? Once you have reached your original created way of being, the maintenance is up to you. And a lot of times when we make changes, we want other people to maintain that. No, The boundaries that you're setting, the maintenance of that, the management of that is up to you. Okay. You must maintain your mind by managing what you're focusing on, right? You have to manage what you're putting your mind on. You must maintain your spirit by managing what affects it. What are you allowing to feed your spirit? What are you allowing to influence your spirit, right? You must maintain your body by managing your physical actions or inactions, by maintaining what you're putting in it, right? What you're putting out. You must maintain that, okay? And so when setting a boundary for people, you are marking your limits, okay? It's not the other way around. They don't get to tell you, right, when they've crossed the line. Some of us have been used to this where others get to authorize your limitations, right? And we experience this in the work environment, in the church, in the home, with siblings, right? We push each other limits, okay, with friends, with children, and with spouses, right? If you're a parent, you know, you tell your child to be quiet, they will push the limit. They'll say, I think I'm going to be quiet in the next 5 minutes, but right now I'm going to continue to make a lot of noise, right? So we experience this in all of our relationships, right? But it's up to us to set the boundary and maintain it, right? Okay. So if the way that you manage your feelings or your emotions, the way you manage that best is to stay away from a certain environment, no one has the right to continue to put you in that environment. And by environment, I don't mean like physical places, I mean emotional places, right? No one has a right to force you to be in that environment. Now, at some point, right, a certain environment or a certain person should not dictate whether you stay there or not. So, in your growth, in your recovery, you should be able to come to a place eventually where you can remain balanced in any atmosphere. But until you get there, maintain your boundaries. Okay. A famous thing that a lot of people say is, you made me. A person cannot make you do anything. It's about you managing your boundaries. Okay. People can entice you to, people can influence you to, but they cannot make you. Okay. So don't force yourself into conversations and situations that will resurrect the old you, right? That's not what we want to use the power of resurrection for. Okay. Um, but the wrong people will put you in those positions for their amusement, right? They want to see you go off. They want to see you crumble. They want to see you depressed, right? So you have to be careful that you are not around people that are not respecting your growth, that are not respecting your coming into your original design, right? You have to limit your interactions with them, okay? And it's important that your boundaries are clear and not blurred, okay? Make your preferences known clearly so that there is no misunderstanding. Now, you have some people who just don't want to understand. These are not the people you should keep around you because they will not respect your boundaries, okay? When you are vague and you're not clear about the boundaries that you're setting, you run the risk of sharing the authority over your life with a person who disrespects your personhood, right? And someone who disrespects your personhood is not considerate of your feelings as a human being, right? And they're simply introducing and then forcing their way of life onto you. Okay. And if their way of life is toxic, if it's full of drama, and if it's negative, then this is what you've given consent to directing your life. Okay. So you want to be careful that your boundaries are clear. Okay. It's important to address your boundaries as you recover. Okay. You have to prioritize your life, your work, and your relationships. And so you have to determine your top priority in each area and begin setting boundaries with yourself first, right? Think and write about what you don't want to engage in anymore, right? What type of conversations you don't want to have anymore, okay? What type of cycles and repetitious things that you don't want to participate in, right? And then don't cross that line. You don't cross it. I mean, you have to set these boundaries that you won't cross, right? Before you expect someone else to respect it. okay? If you disrespect yourself or lose value in yourself, it will be hard for others to respect what you fail to respect, right? It will be hard for others to value what you value, right? If you've shown them that there is no value here, right? It's hard for people to see that you don't value yourself, but yet you require them to value you. Okay. So when setting your boundaries, make sure it is from a place where you're no longer viewing yourself as a victim. Okay. You're no longer seeing yourself as inferior to everyone else. You're not setting boundaries from a place of fear or that automatic expectation of failure. Sometimes we set boundaries, right, because we automatically expect to fail. So our limitations are stretched really, really wide because we just leave it open because we automatically expect to get a no. We automatically expect to fail, right? You don't want to set boundaries from that place, okay? When you still have that desire, and we're talking about the victim mentality. So when you still have the desire to receive sympathy and pity and attention from your hardship or from your trauma, you may not be ready to exit that mentality, right? That victim mentality. Because to no longer carry that, you have to give up wanting people to feel sorry for you, right? And a lot of people like that feeling because they don't have to work as hard to get to where they need to be, right? When people know the traumas you've experienced, when they know the situation you're in, it doesn't really require you to work to evolve, to grow, right? Because they pretty much baby you. Okay. But if everybody else is doing the work for you, how will you be able to stand on your own? Right? That means you will always need somebody to validate you, right? You won't build your character, you won't build your intelligence. Okay? You won't see the value of your existence through God's eyes because you are seeing it through the eyes of your hardship. You are seeing it through the eyes of your trauma, and that becomes your identity, not what God created you to be and do, but the situation that happened to you becomes who you are, right? Your experiences are not who you are. It's something that happened to you, it's something you went through. It is not who you are. And a lot of you are having to like pull yourself and separate yourself from that identity, right? These experiences can shape and form your character and the way you act, the way you feel, but it's up to you to allow it to shape you in a way that strengthens you and not in a way that paralyzes you, right? And so these events that happen to you can paralyze you because you don't have the knowledge of how to cope with it, okay? And when you don't know how to cope, you automatically assume that you don't hold responsibility for anything in your life, right? But what is happening in your life is up to you to take the authority and to control it, right? You have authority over your own life. Where do you place your circumstances? Where do you place the things that have happened to you? Do you give it the driver's seat? Right? Or do you control how it affects your life? Even things that are out of your control, like accidents and death and things that have happened to you by the hands of other people, you can control how it affects your life, right? You may not have been in control of it happening, but you can control how it affects your life. If it will strengthen you in some areas, if it will build character, or will it paralyze you, right? So if you keep that victim mentality, it will be hard to set the boundaries that you need to establish a good foundation for growth. Okay. So you have to choose to give up that feeling of wanting people to feel sorry for you, right? You have to give it up. Okay. You have to use your experiences as a strength, right? As a character builder, right? So after you've come to that point of creating limits for yourself and others with the right mentality, right? Now you are going to manage and maintain those boundaries that you set up. Okay. And some simple foundational boundaries involve setting times and limits, right? Setting times for when you go to sleep, setting the time for when you go up, Setting the time for how much social media you watch, how much work you do, right? How much fun you have. Setting the time to yourself to meditate, to relax, and to refocus, right? These are some simple foundational boundaries that you need to set. Okay. Setting certain time limits for negative feelings, right? Refusing to stay in a state of panic or a state of anxiety or a state of extreme sadness. Setting the time limit for how long you're going to sit in fear, right? These are foundational boundaries that you have to set for yourself, right? And then make sure others are aware of these boundaries that you set. Okay. Also, setting the limit for those who enter your personal space or receive personal information. Some of us tell too many people too many things, right? You don't need to do that. Okay. Setting the limits for who gets to influence your spirit and thoughts, right? Setting the limits for um who influences your actions, right? Are you surrounded by people who influence you to do things that you don't want to do? Whether they use coercion, maybe they use pity, or even if they use force, right? Are you surrounding yourself with people that influence you to do things you don't want to do? You want to set limits to those types of people. Okay. You set limits for how far a conversation can go, right? Set limits to your spending, right? These are foundational boundaries. You set limits to your eating, right? You set limits so that you don't cross that boundary. Okay. And there's also boundaries that should be non-negotiables, right? Your faith should be non-negotiable. Your integrity, your safety. I'm talking about mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, right? Your authenticity should be non-negotiable. Your life, your peace. These are things and boundaries that should be non-negotiables. Maybe you haven't worked up to that yet, but these should be non-negotiables, okay? Once these boundaries are established, right? Meaning that they are recognized and accepted by you. You don't stop there, right? You don't stop at setting them. You continue to manage it. Okay. If a country put up a wall and they tell people don't cross the wall and they just leave it, what do you think happens, right? Soon as they leave, people gonna start crossing the wall, right? So they have to put people in place to manage that boundary that they've set. Same way with you. You have to put systems in place to manage your boundaries, right? Have people in place that support you, that encourage you to grow, right? Have people that will block the intruders, right? And the intruder don't have to be physical people. It can be your feelings, right? They'll let you know, hey, you've been sad for a whole day now. Okay. It's time to be happy now, right? Sometimes we get so used to people and systems that cause brokenness that we become very uncomfortable with the ones that benefit us, right? We seek to find the fault in it and push away from it and hide from it, right? So a lot of us have to go through that uncomfortable stage of letting the right people in after kicking out the wrong ones, right? They won't have the same perspectives. So your instinct is to reject it. Once you're used to being around negative people, your instinct is to reject positive people, right? They're not going to move the same way the other people did, right? It's going to be new for you. It's going to feel new for you. You returning back to yourself. It calls for you to blend your new mindset with your new reality and your new environments, okay? So once you start to change your mind and change your perspective, that has to get used to it. You know, you have to get used to your new reality in being yourself, right? And you find that certain things that you are okay with before, they don't fit with the new version of yourself. Okay, some of the places you used to go, they don't fit with the new version of yourself. The friends you had, they're not going to fit with this new version of you, right? So if you haven't created boundaries before, start with you. Okay, what are you no longer going to take from you? Okay, what are you no longer going to take from others, right? because some of us have some ways, and we got to say, I'm not taking this no more from me, right? What are you going to give to you? Okay. Are you going to give yourself permission to fail or get back up? Right? Are you going to allow yourself to be at peace? Right? Are you going to give love and kindness to the world? So when you are setting these boundaries, start with yourself. What are you going to allow? What is your limit for you? Okay. Unhealthy boundaries, they disregard your needs, your wants, and your values. Okay. And so remember the difference between needing and wanting something or someone. Things you want, they only serve you, right? Things you need, both of you are served. Okay. So don't only set boundaries for what you want and leave out your needs. Okay. You are not allowing only what you want to set your boundary unless it is beneficial to your overall health and wholeness. Okay. You're also not setting boundaries based on the wants and needs of other people while placing little value on your own. Okay. That is unhealthy. I repeat that again. You're not setting boundaries based on other people's wants and needs and placing little value on your own wants and needs. Okay. That is not healthy. Okay. And this is in friendships, romantic relationships, parental relationships, right? Because this can cause bitterness and resentment, right? There is a boundary that you must set as a person that has authority over other people. There is a limit of how much of their desire you make sacrifices for. There is a limit to how much of their desires you make sacrifices for. Parents, spouses, friends make this mistake not having this balance. Okay. It should be mutual. Okay. Parents, if you give your kids everything they want, what happens? What ends up happening? They don't value anything, right? They take you for granted. They feel entitled, right? But if you give them what they need and you give them what they want based on its availability, based on your financial responsibility, and based on their partnership with accountability, then you will create well-balanced adults, right? And so a perfect example is how God deals with us, right? Thank God he did not give us everything we prayed for and everything we wanted, right? He gives us what we need and he gives us the wants that we can handle. And what we are able to handle depends on us being accountable and responsible, right? Your friends and your family are responsible for maintaining the values that you set if they want to keep a relationship with you, right? And you are responsible for maintaining the values that they set as well. Okay, so don't be the person setting boundaries for everybody and you can't keep them, right? And you can't or won't keep them, right? You want them not to cross any lines, but you crossing like 5 lines in the first 5 minutes of conversation, right? Do not be that person. Okay. When you begin managing your surroundings, your influences, and your recovery, you may feel the urge to hide. Like you just want to be tucked away from the world. Okay. Not come out. It's scary to share the new version of you with the world. But with your boundaries set, you can navigate that with wisdom and intent, right? So after creating those limits, manage and maintain them. Okay, you don't just want to set something, establish something, recognize something, figure out how to manage and how to maintain them. And you have to do both. To manage is to be in control of, right? And to maintain is to preserve what you are in control of. Okay, to manage is to be in control of, to maintain is to preserve what you are in control of. So you must do both with your boundaries, okay? Not in fear, right? You're not doing this in fear, but in one who has chosen to take authority over their life and to preserve the life destined specifically for them, okay? This requires commitment, Setting boundaries requires consistency, right? And accountability, right? So surround yourself with people who show excellence in these characteristics, right? Allow them to influence your perspective so that you can start making better decisions in your life. Okay? Don't kick out the people you need to nourish and fertilize you as you grow. Sometimes these people, they're not even lifelong people. They won't be lifelong friends. Some of them will, okay? But some people, they're there for a particular season of growth and then they move on or you move on, right? So don't be afraid to end cycles and relationships that don't be afraid of relationships that are ending because you fear that you won't find the same on the other side. You probably won't, right? Because what you need during your seed stage, you won't necessarily need during the stage that you're bearing fruit. Okay. And I need you to understand it. So don't be afraid of time. A lot of times, if we've been friends with someone for a long time, you can still remain cordial, but sometimes they don't fit in that next stage of your life. Okay. So it doesn't mean they're not important. It is important for that. They were important for that stage, right? But now you've excelled at that level and it's simply time for the next phase of growth. Okay. Pruning is necessary and sometimes painful, okay? But it is required for you to be the best version of yourself. So I hope that gave you some insight on setting boundaries for yourself and setting boundaries for others, making sure that they are clear, that they're not blurred, that they're not vague, right? That there's some understanding of what you've set up, how you want your life to be now that you're walking as a new version of yourself or as the version that God originally created you to be. So that concludes our session. I want to end with a new statement for this volume, and it says, I am in recovery. I have discovered who God has created me to be. I have processed the traumas, the disappointments, and failures. I have learned how to manage my thoughts and feelings. I have grown in emotional intelligence. I am now processing my future, my victories, my peace, and my joy. So I pray that you all receive something that you can use in your everyday life. Please share with others that may be going through this recovery process. They're exiting out that stage of discovery. They know what's wrong with them. They know they've uncovered the hidden things, what they've been dealing with, and now they're in recovery. So they may need help discovering how to set those boundaries and understanding how to manage and maintain those boundaries. Setting a schedule does help you manage your day. So it keeps you from being overwhelmed by keeping track of the things that you are doing daily. So, and I also want to say, as I did this session, um, you find out how much we need to utilize Christ and our Father, God, as the example. Like how He deals with us is a perfect example of how we should handle, our relationships here in the earth. And so, when He said about the desire being someone else's desire being a complete sacrifice for you, um, that's not balanced, right? And so I can see how a lot of friendships or relationships, even between parent and child, um, and siblings and things like that, have become strained because that wasn't mutual, right? And so we have to have balance in our relationships with other people, that it is not you, basically them setting the boundary for you of how much of your time they're going to take. They're setting it for you versus you saying, okay, hey, I'm not going to spend that much time on this. I have other things to do, right? I have to tend to my family. um you have to set those boundaries. It's your time. You set the boundary on your time. You don't allow other people to basically force their dysfunction, right, on you. Okay, so I want you all to be mindful of that. See you all back Friday at 3. Later.